Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode on the Hidden Why podcast. My name's Lee Martinuzzi and this is my interview with Josh Piterman. We're discussing his book, Behind the Mask, Uncovering Self-Discovery and Vulnerability. Man, what an amazing conversation with Josh. Based in Melbourne, he's a celebrated musical theatre performer and obviously the author now of Behind the Mask. He's known for his role in many performances, including The Phantom in London's West End. And Josh talks about the deeper and psychological journey behind the spotlight. We talk about the masks we wear, both in our personal and professional lives, and how if we peel them away, we can reveal who we truly are and work from a deeper place, a place from the heart or the soul, as Josh would talk about in this. We talk about meditation, mindfulness, and how we explore the unconscious mind to live a more free, fulfilled, and meaningful life. I've really enjoyed the conversation and I hope you do as well. As always, guys, take a listen, connect with myself, connect with Josh, and let us know what you think once you've listened to this episode. Enjoy. G'day, Josh. Welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you here.
Thanks so much, Lee. Thanks for having me on, mate.
A fellow Aussie down in Melbourne.
Yeah. Yes. Where are you?
For a change, I'm on the sunny coast.
Oh, beautiful.
Up in Queensland, not so sunny lately, but no
Sunny
complaints.
down here.
Was that?
Yeah.
You know, we had a nice couple of days and then it's just gone back to rain today, but that's all good. Normally I have a lot of overseas guests on the show, so it's always good to have a fellow Aussie come on the show. And mate, you've certainly got a story to share. You've just launched your book, Behind the Mask, which is doing quite well. So congratulations on that, first of all. But beyond the book, tell us a bit, because you're a performer.
Yeah. So my career for the last 20 years or so has been in performing arts as a musical theatre performer and classical singer. I've played major roles, played the Phantom in the Phantom of the Opera, both in Australia and London's West End. Played Jean Valjean, which is the role that Hugh Jackman played in the Les Miserables movie, also in London's West End. West Side Story, Cats, Hairspray, Blood Brothers, like lots and lots of different musicals, and then obviously do a lot of singing, just concerts, with symphony orchestras around the world.
Wow.
Got an album in that space. Got to sing for lots of major events, Australian Open tennis final and Bledisloe Cup and Formula One Grand Prix and the King Charles. And like I've had a great career as a singer and experienced so many highs. But with all of that, you start to look at the top of the mountain and begin to wonder whether it's ever enough. And that's where the book, or the seed for the book, sort of started from.
Okay, talk to us about that. So if it's ever enough, I've been thinking about that a fair bit lately myself. And I think that's a problem in society at the moment. There seems to be never enough. Yeah. We're always in this constant chase for more and better things, and it causes quite a bit of overwhelm and anxiety and stress and uncertainty and self-doubt and all those things that come with that. And I reflect back to a personal time in my life where I packed up everything and went overseas to Japan with my family and had this realization that there's more than enough that I need to be quite happy and content. But yet here I am back in sort of the rat race, as they call it, chasing for more. So that's the seed for your book, writing this book?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, because the thought of what's behind the mask sort of and really having a deeper relationship with that came to me while I was playing the Phantom in London in 2019. And so the irony of literally putting on a mask, a physical mask, to play, arguably the most iconic male role in musical theatre, and starting to investigate who I was behind that mask is not lost on me, because I had been, cultivating and hustling and etching out this career in musical theatre for so long to arrive at that spot. And yes, it was glorious. And yes, I was very grateful for it and even really thriving in the opportunity. But what was happening, from the outside looking, he's killing it. But what was happening internally, still feelings of self-doubt, still feelings of imposter syndrome, still feelings of anxiety around performances, still feelings of a need to control things, still feeling of shame when things didn't go right, all sorts of human experiences and human feelings that everyone goes through. But I thought once I get to the top of this mountain, all that would dissipate. And it did. And so I was like, when does it end? When does when does when do I arrive at a mountain? When do I get enough from the external world to feel enough internally? And I realized that it never ends unless I cultivate a deeper relationship with the unchanging parts of myself behind the mask.
So do you talk about this mask, is it kind of like we're wearing a mask to protect our vulnerabilities from?
Yeah. So in Latin, the word for mask is persona.
Right.
And the persona is a part of the ego, really. And so we're out in the world projecting a version of ourselves, our persona, to the outside world, or there's been a version that's been bestowed upon us by society, by conditioning, by family, by the education system, whatever. And so we're a product of all these things, but there's all this other stuff, a deeper truth, what I call in the book our heart story, which is often a bit dirtier and muddier and imperfect, that we don't want to share with the world. A fear of judgment, fear of shame, and it does ask us to be vulnerable. We're going to share that. So, the book is full of very vulnerable, candid stories that I do share. And, I'm a fan of vulnerability. Brene Brown talks about the power of vulnerability at many times, and I'm a big fan of Brene's. I'm
Yeah.
also very conscious that vulnerability without feeling safe and without trust, either in a deep sense trust within yourself or with those you're sharing it with, is very dangerous because vulnerability can very easily be weaponized. So there's a byplay with vulnerability, a dance that we have to engage in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at our life, our persona that's been, I know, developed by our environment as we grow, but there's this inner persona that we then put the mask over and cover. And we, I guess, instinctively protect ourselves from vulnerability for that reason, because it is dangerous if we are too vulnerable and left open.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, we want to be more vulnerable because it's a much better place to come from, I think, to live life openly
Well, it's
and from
liberating.
your heart.
It's freeing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the mask isn't an enemy.
Yeah.
There's this book, a Ryan Holiday book, The Ego is the Enemy. And I don't think the ego or the mask persona, it's not the enemy. It's a part of being human. We're conscious beings, aware beings who also have this thing called an ego or persona, and we have to dance between these two spaces. So the issue isn't the mask. The issue is when we're wearing all these masks unconsciously and how that manifests in our behaviors and in the relationship we have with ourselves and the world. So, let's say you've got a pretty face, and you get a lot of compliments for your pretty face or your cute puppy or, whatever else that's cooking up in your external world, your big house, your fancy job, your big role on the West End, and you start getting compliments for it, you get validated.
Yeah.
You want to sustain that mask at all costs. Because that's what gives you leverage. That's what gives you value. That's what gives you a sense of identity in the world. But these things are impermanent. All of those things are impermanent and they're conditional. And when we are stuck being placing a lot of value on our worth being something that is so conditional, we run into a lot of trouble. So that's the one on the one hand. The other hand is what you talk about on protection. So and the one meets the two in that you're wearing a mask not because you're getting validated for it, but because you're so afraid of people seeing what's buried beneath it.
Right. I see. Okay. Well explained. I sort of could, well, I'm not a performer myself, but you going into Phantom playing that role, you're really going into a character and you're consciously putting on a mask, right?
Yeah,
How do you relate it to that? Like, do
yeah.
you,
So there's a really good question. I know where you're going with this. Because actually what happens is you're consciously putting on a mask, very aware that I'm playing a role, but the unconscious in me is playing out within the role, which is always interesting because all I can go to is my bank of experiences as a human being and a soul to imbue the character, right?
right, right,
So there's a great story that where the unconscious plays out into the conscious experience of playing the Phantom, where about, I don't know, a couple of months into it, I was starting to get really sick, like regularly get run down and sick. And my voice started to go, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? So I saw the ENT, and he scoped my cords. It's like they all look fine. Saw the crystal around my neck at the time, and he's like, "Hey, would you be up for something a little bit more esoteric?" And I was like, "Sure." I was up for something a bit esoteric. So he sent me to a performance coach, who really spiritual lady, and he asked me what the nucleus of the character was for me. Where was I? What was the seed of his journey? And I said, "Oh, that's simple. He's an abandoned boy, and his mum took one look at his face and said, 'He's hideous. I'm going to throw him on the steps of the circus, and never want to see him again.' So it's abandonment. He's got an abandonment." She was sort of like, "Uh-huh, like this is going to be fun." And we do a hypnosis, and she takes me back to a time. I was about 6 years old. I think I talk about this in the book. I was about 6 years old, and I was waiting for my parents to pick me up from after school care,
right.
and they're like an hour and 15 minutes late, and my parents were always late. My parents were terrible with time, so it's just me and the guy who runs the after school program sitting on a table looking out the window, and I feel so unloved, I feel so abandoned. Yeah. My parents are amazing, but they were just terrible with time. And for a 6 year old in those first, formative years of our life, 0 to 7,
Hmm.
I received many abandonment wounds with my parents' tardiness.
Yeah.
And so I was just brought to tears of like so much pain that little boy experienced that he never got to release. I was purging. I was screaming, crying with that woman for about 10 minutes.
Wow.
So much came out. Never ever again in the 350 odd times I played that role did I feel the level of fatigue, exhaustion, illness, that I was feeling at that moment in time in those early stages. And it was all because the unconscious was playing out night after night after night in a conscious space.
What a bizarre connection.
Yeah, but so not bizarre
Well,
because
yeah, bizarre,
the
bizarre when
unconscious
you
is
made it,
playing
but
out for us all the time.
yeah.
We think we're living in a world of free will, that we get to choose everything that's going on in our lives. But yet, so often, our unconscious is the puppet master pulling the strings on our conscious self.
Hmm.
You know, that's how we're a product of all our belief systems, all our conditionings, and that's all sitting there, all our wounds and traumas, and that's all sitting there buried underneath in the unconscious, and we're out playing in the world. So unless we become really aware of
Yeah.
this, unpack this stuff, unfold to a place that's beyond that stuff, we're constantly in an illusion of free will.
That connection there was making you, at the time before it was released, feel a bit ill and lethargic and run down. And then once released, it sort of just changed.
Yeah. Body keeps the score, right? That
Mm,
uh, Bessel's book, Bessel van der something Dutch. But yeah, the body keeps the score. You know, it's all in there.
interesting. How did you find that changed your performance?
It didn't change my capacity to enter into the depths of what I was entering into.
Yeah.
It just changed the recovery. I just didn't feel so cooked from it. It's
Yeah.
like because consciously I could play the scene in the way. I just wasn't, you know, I wasn't playing really dangerous games with a very old wound.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you find it
unbelievable.
works in the reverse, like with when you're playing in character, how that affects your subconscious mind and ultimately outside the character when you go back to real life? Because I have heard of this with particular performers.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Um, yeah, I mean,
Like if you get so in depth with that character, do you find that
yeah, then you get lost in it, and you hear about people like Heath Ledger, and
yeah,
yeah, yeah, I think that's still playing into how that character meets your own conditioning and your own wounds and your own
yeah,
traumas,
yeah,
and what's happening in the byplay there, what's happening in the intersection
yes,
there.
yeah.
Um,
It again goes back to that connection there that's not yet released.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very, very, very interesting. And I think we've had a lot of sad cases with a lot of great artists who haven't been able to meet their wounds,
Mm,
use their art as a vessel to express it, but ultimately can't transcend it or work through it enough. And you look at, I think it's, do we call it the 27 Club or the 28 Club?
yeah.
Amy Winehouse and Kurt Cobain and Heath's a part of that. And yeah, it's just deeply sad, really.
Interesting age of life to get to that and then go through that. Because I guess everyone's self-discovery and this larger level of awareness comes at different times, right?
Hmm.
Um, did you find a particular point in your life where you started to really delve into this topic of,
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah. I think it's a crisis, a crucible moment, and that's why I ask people in the book to really chase discomfort because it is our opportunity for growth.
Mm,
Nothing's suffering will be your best teacher if you want to see it through a lens of learning. And so we can give ourselves little tastes of discomfort, a little taste of crisis in a way. But there's going to be these big crucible moments in our lives, and no one is immune to them. But can we descend consciously in them and learn from them? So for mine, it was divorce at age 30.
yeah.
That was huge for me. And when I stopped blaming her and turned the arrow inward and realized what I needed to work on, where I was controlling and where I was bullying, when I was a perfectionist and needed things to go my way or my way. She wasn't perfect either. She had her stuff that she needed to work on, but I could only look after what I needed to work on so that I could evolve in future, relationships. So that was huge learning for me. I sort of, you know, I speak a lot to the hero's journey, which I'm sure you know about, Joseph
Mm,
Campbell's hero's journey, and we all sort of have that first part of our journeys that is quite narcissistic and self-involved and whatever else, and it's my adventure and where I'm going on this, but you're going to get hit with that ordeal. Like it's just unavoidable. That like a death of something, a death of an ego, a death of an idea, a death of a relationship, death of mother and father, and all these things, and they're fucked. We hate going through them,
mm,
but there's always an elixir. There's always a gift to be found in there, and I think it's Carl Jung who said the gift was always lives buried underneath the wound, and and so if we can sort of acknowledge that this is inevitable in our journey, we can be in those muddy, sticky, crunchy, hideous moments with conscious awareness that we're going through it, knowing that we're going to get something wonderful out of this. And so you almost take the toolkit in. Like you go, oh, I'm going to go in with my magnifying glass, and I'm going to go in with my little um, broom and maybe sweep out some dirt and some mud and some ashes and what else along the way, because it will illuminate something that is a gem, is a bit of wisdom I'm going to get from this. So then I can then take on the next part of my journey, which is ultimately, you know, using what I've learned or what we've learned to help others in the world. And that's, yeah.
It's a very strong growth mindset. That is right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I said, suffering is our best teacher.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
Well, it changes the conscious, subconscious mind, the brain in massive ways that you couldn't even predict.
Yeah. But you've got to
I
turn your mindset from victim mindset to growth mindset. You have to
yeah
flick that switch. And
yeah.
that's got to be a conscious decision.
I was just going to say that because some people you find go through massive trauma and they never get out of it, or it takes them years and years to get out, and then other people go through it and they seem to be back on their feet after a short period of time.
Yeah.
And you might be one of them, but why do you think is that? Is it just because you've innately got this growth mindset that, hey,
Yeah. I think
you've
there
got
is innate stuff
agency?
in there. I think I've got agency. And there's different levels of trauma.
Yeah, of
What the
course.
trauma that I've experienced is not what Gabor Maté would say as capital T trauma.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't been abused physically. I haven't lived in a war zone. I haven't had famine. I haven't suffered um, things that are so hard to get through. And so when I'm saying, yeah, if you can, suffering will be your greatest teacher, I'm not sort of saying, oh yeah, you know, kids being bombed in Israel or Gaza, can just work through this stuff like that. Like that is capital T, full on trauma.
Mm.
I'm talking about the suffering of the mind here, the narratives that we play out for ourselves. I had a vocal injury in 2023. It's not going to kill me, but it has changed the way I experience my career because I've had to allow a version of that career to die. Now, that's nothing like sitting at home and watching rockets fly overhead and wondering whether you're going to be killed. But I have had to allow a death of some kind within my career. So that's
Mm.
more what I'm referring to. That the things that happen to us that maybe aren't so traumatic, they might be life threatening. It might be a cancer or whatever, something like
Yeah,
that.
but even then you can, you hear of stories, and I'm like you, I can't relate to that sort of capital T level trauma, but there's a lot of people and stories that you've heard where they've gone through that massive trauma and come out on the
Totally.
other side
Yep.
with great
I've got
wisdoms.
a
And I think,
podcast
yeah,
called Behind the Mask, and our first
yeah,
guest was Elena Dokic, and I mean, serious abuse
yeah,
of the Elena experience, and she talks about her journey from victim to survivor to thriver. And many people go through that experience too because of the capacity for a growth mindset. So there is resilience involved.
yeah.
And I think you can train resilience. I do talk about it in the book. Yeah.
Mm. You talk a lot about impermanence and, nothing's forever.
Yeah.
I love that topic.
Yeah, me too. This too shall pass.
I think a lot of people might get scared of that topic because, yeah, this shall pass and everything is impermanent and you own nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how do we accept that? And how do we talk about that in a positive way that has actual benefits to living a fuller, meaningful life?
Yeah. I think when you realize if you're not attached, then you can celebrate the impermanence. And that's the thing. It's around attachment, you know. Um, and whether you're attached to something wonderful, a wonderful experience that you need or that you've had and you want again, or whether you're attached to negative experiences in the victim sort
Yeah,
of mindset,
right.
either way you're in a trap, right?
Yeah,
Either way it's got you. Either way you're attached. So if you can celebrate the impermanence of everything, then you move into a space where you're not attached, but you're enjoying it. I love and things like gratitude mindset really help this. Um, Things like having faith, I think, help this. So having being devoted to something beyond yourself. But yeah, like the little things, like you know what, I'm going to sit here and just for a moment after that brunch I had with my family and just celebrate that just for 3 seconds, 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I know that there'll be a time when I can't experience that. And so there's a little bit of death meditation that I think we have to all do
Mm.
because everything is going to die around us, including ourselves. And that can sound really morbid for some, but impermanence means death. And we have to acknowledge that really fully and sit with that and go, well, this could be my last meal I have with my mum and dad or
Mm.
with my best mate that I'm about to have. And you
Yeah.
end up celebrating that meal. You're more present in that meal. You're more loving in that meal. You're more grateful in that meal. So, a death meditation is a great thing for us to do,
Mm.
even for ourselves. I think everyone should write their own eulogy, for example.
Yep.
Um,
I've heard
and
this.
if it
Yeah.
doesn't, and, and if it doesn't read the way you want it to read, maybe you got a few things in your life to change.
It's not a bad practice, huh? Not a bad practice.
Yeah. So a lot of the work I do is around soul, is around the soul.
Yeah.
And when I talk about awareness and consciousness, and it really is the soul, the depth of the soul. And
What do you mean by soul?
soul is awareness. Soul is the unchanging part of ourselves, the ever present part of ourselves. Yes, life carries impermanence, but the soul is the unchanging, permanent. It's formless, shapeless, timeless, and it's always there. Yeah. And
Would
it's
you say
often,
it's like
and
the
it's always
consciousness?
yeah, it is consciousness.
Consciousness? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So from a scientific perspective, it's consciousness.
Yeah.
From a Hindi perspective, it's the Atman. From a Buddhist perspective, they refer to as the witnesser or the observer, the part of us that is seeing the psychological form, seeing our thoughts and feelings and emotions in our
Mm.
physical body. Like we don't say, I am foot, I am hand. We say my foot, my hand. We don't say I am thought or I am emotion. We say my thoughts, my emotions. The my is the inherent unchanging part of ourselves. The my is the awareness, the soul.
Yeah.
Um, and the soul, we want to have more soulful relationships or live more in soul. You don't get there quickly.
Mm.
Soul is an act. And I know a lot of people on the spiritual journey path are like, I want to get high, I want to get. So you don't get to the soul. It's not up and fast. It's slow and down. And so you've got to slow down to meet it. So
Mm.
having that moment with yourself to just go, it was a beautiful dinner with mum and dad
Yeah.
or whoever it was. I'm so grateful for that. That is the slow down. Geez, the tree looks lovely. I'm just going to sit and look at it. That's a relationship with soul. And the beautiful thing about soul is it connects. Whereas the ego is always a bit fear driven, loves to disconnect, loves to separate, loves to have a relationship of me versus them. I'm right, you're wrong. You know, I'm Trump, you're Biden, or whatever it was. It's always in separation mode.
Yeah.
The soul is
Collective.
living in the beauty of oneness. It's always there trying to connect. So the more we can see each other from a perspective of soul,
Yeah.
the more we're just a mirror to each other's journey,
Mm.
and the more oneness we create. But we're so separated from it in society. Often we can't even hear the soul communicating with us.
Mm. Mm.
It's the bigger voice, but it often is the little voice because the ego's voice is so loud. The soul's down there screaming away. We can't hear it. And the way to enter into it is to find moments of stillness, find moments of presence, find moments of silence so that you can really listen to it. The intuition comes from the soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
These sort of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that too. Celebrating, those moments in life. I mean, you talked about, celebrating lunch with your family or whatever it might be.
all
But
the little
also
things.
those moments where you're going through massive change or challenge or even minor uncomfortableness. And and you talked about going into a more, pushing outside your comfort zone more often as well. So you become more resilient in the
Yeah,
process.
yeah. Whatever it is, I think for some people it's an ice bath. That was big for me. Um, for other people, it's running an extra K or running that 5 kilometers a little quicker, lifting a little heavier weight, having an uncomfortable conversation. That's a big one for a lot of people. We want to people please, and I talk about that in the book, placating and appeasing and going, well, you know what, I don't want to cause conflict here, so I won't say anything. But you're the only one who ends up suffering if you don't say anything
Yeah.
because they've got no idea half the time. Whatever it is that puts you into a little bit of discomfort, just accessible discomfort over and over and over and over again daily,
Yeah.
builds resilience, builds a robust mindset. I think that's really important. And as a performer, I'm lucky that I'm grateful for the fact that I got to do shows 8 times a week, and many of them, you're not, you step out there with that buzz of anxiety, and you go, you step into this. I'm not going to walk around this. I'm not going to walk over this. I'm not under this. I'm walking through this.
Hmm.
I'm walking into the fire of a little fear here, and I come out the other side, and I'm okay, and that builds resilience.
Yeah.
So whatever that is for someone, but I think we should do it that way.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Talk to me about anxiety. I mean, how have you dealt with your anxiety over the years? And I'm
Not
assuming
well.
not well. A lot of people don't want to talk about it vulnerably, but the more
Oh,
I
you'll get
speak
that.
about it, the more I see that so many of us have it. And I'll tell a story. I felt I couldn't breathe at this point of life several years ago, and I thought I was having a heart problem or something like that. Didn't know. I went to the doctors after a while of struggling with it. I just said, "No, I can't breathe tonight. I need to go to the hospital." And I did. And they did all the tests on me, and they said, "You might just have anxiety." And I said, "What? No, I don't have anxiety." And it wasn't until that moment I realized how much anxiety I carried without actually acknowledging it,
Mm,
which is fascinating. But yeah, I think a lot of people deal with it, and we just don't talk about it enough or too scared to say that we're anxious.
imperfect.
Yeah, I guess that's where it comes from.
Yeah, it's yeah. I think we're wanting to be perfect in the world. And we'll come back to that because we touched on it earlier, where that comes from. Um, so I sort of see majority of anxiety as being a negative based or fear based projection of the future happening in the present moment. Yeah. And people often go, oh, can you say that again? So
Yeah,
fear based or negative based projection of the future happening in the present moment. And it's why Seneca, great Stoic philosopher, said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality.
hmm.
So the mind is playing out a version of future events for us because we're not actually present in where we are. We're not fully in the moment. And so the antidote to anxiety is
Is
more presence.
yeah, makes
So
sense.
the
There
mind
you
then goes into a cycle of negative or fear-based thoughts and runs on them, and we're out of control.
go.
The mind is controlling us, or our thoughts are controlling us, rather than us being in control of them.
Yeah,
And so a lot of meditation really isn't about stopping thoughts, blah blah blah. Which a lot of people, I can't meditate, I can't stop my thoughts. It's about changing our relationship with them so that we see the root or the seed of that potentially anxious thought pattern or thought spiral, catch it in the moment, and don't need to go down that path. We see it as a
yeah,
narrative, an illusion, and not a reality. So that's where meditation
yeah.
has helped. But God,
Well
I was a
explained.
shocker. I was a shocker. My early 20s as a performer, I remember doing West Side Story. I'd sit on the toilet for like 10 minutes beforehand. The
What was
relationship
giving
between the
you?
mind
What
and
was your anxiety? I mean, as a performer, I
fear
always
of
think,
judgment, fear of
yeah,
failure, fear of not being perfect, fear of not being right, fear of not the audience not liking me, fear of the other actors not liking me, fear of the producers and the creative team not thinking I'm good, fear of my own sense that I wasn't talented enough and that I was an imposter. Like all of this,
All these
like just,
things. Yeah.
I mean, it was like a buffet of options just cycling around my head, you know? And I loved performing so much. I just loved it so much, and it was destroying me at the same time. And so I really had to start the journey inwards, really. And that really um, that started happening late 20s, early 30s. Around the time I got divorced, I started meditating. Phantom
Right.
happened later, and I was I was more I could go out there and perform without like that rush at the start, but it'd be more reflective. So my thoughts about myself with Phantom wasn't bef before I go out there, I'm freaking out. It was sort of afterwards. I'd sort of reflect upon that and go, geez, I wasn't in the moment there, or geez, I was really trying to control there. Geez, I wasn't that good tonight, like, and so that's where the imposter syndrome came from. It was
You're saying
one,
your anxiety was more after the performance rather than prior to?
yeah,
So it
yeah,
switched a
it's
bit?
sweet,
Okay.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. But the stuff beforehand was so debilitating because it meant that I didn't want to go out there. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, and I learned tricks and stuff by the time I got to Phantom. So Phantom, I felt that rush at the start, that adrenaline, that nervous tension. I began to use that
Mm.
in the show, and so it's quite good. There's a scene at the start, Phantom's first appearance. It's in a dressing room. He's behind the dressing room mirror, and Christine, who is his muse, his infatuation, his obsession, his love, is he's been having a relationship with her through the walls and been teaching her in this mysterious, ghostly sort of way. But no one has tried to pick her up. Then suddenly, this handsome aristocrat comes and sees her in her starring role for the first time. They were friends from younger years. He comes into the dressing room. Suddenly, there's a threat, and he's there behind the mirror watching it all. And as he leaves, like he just roars out his anger. His first line, so "You insolent boy, the slave of fashion," like he's screaming. And so I just used all of my heart beating a million miles an hour to match what the Phantom was feeling.
Right.
So rather than resisting the anxiety, and this is what I've learned, the more I suppress, the more I push down, the more I resist, the more it persists. So use it.
Yeah.
The same way a lion uses its anxiety to
Mm.
hunt down a zebra or an antelope. It's not there
Yeah.
going, oh, no, 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 don't feel like this, calm, confident lion energy, like it's going out there and it needs that. So we need it too. So I learned that those nerves and that rush is useful. And that was really important. There's a time for it.
Yeah. Or switch the way you use that energy that's coming through.
Yeah. It's energy, like it's emotion, it's energy in motion. Like
Mm.
it needs to move,
Yeah.
you know. So
Well, the
when
same
you
feeling
suppress,
you get when you're really anxious or excited are very much the same in the body, right?
yeah, totally, chemically, yeah. So
So you just have to repurpose it in a way. How do
it's
you
a
tell
repurpose,
yourself
is a
to
great way to,
repurpose that? But how do you go, okay, I'm feeling that anxious and
yeah. So when I'm feeling it now, and I feel a wave of it, I can I can see what it can be about. Like I know exactly what it is, so I can go, I'm anxious about that um, performance I've got in a week. And I can go, why am I anxious? I can question it. I'm anxious because I had vocal surgery 2 months ago,
yeah,
and this is the first performance since then. Okay, why does that make me anxious? It makes me anxious because I want to be my best self. I want to be perfect. Why do I need to be perfect? Because I need to be liked. Why do I need to be liked? So I have a what to a why, and
yeah,
I unpack it. And then through all those whys, I hit a point where I'm like, it's it's
it's
going to be
okay.
okay. It's okay. Or I feel it and I go, how do I move this? Because I need to move it in some way. And that's where I go. Exercise, breath work has been a huge one for me. That sort of somatic stuff, quite intense,
Yep,
holotropic style of breath work that people may have seen Wim Hof do, or other people do. I do my own, but I go to a studio here in Melbourne that does it, and that sort of stuff also just shifts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that so much of what we experience is in the body. And yes, talk therapy is great. Go and see a psych, talk about your anxiety, but it's living in the body. And I think so we have to use the body and move the body and express through the body in order for it to escape the body.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
let
now,
it out. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Talk to us about some of your meditation routines and what you've practiced, because that's a big part of it. And for me, I've been doing it. I just wrote a post about it for 10 years now. And it's like you said, it's the hardest. I think it's the hardest practice that I've ever had to try and incorporate it into a daily routine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what do
And
you do?
I shifted it from a routine to a ritual.
Yeah.
And I think we do routine very well in life. We've got a routine of brushing our teeth, going to sleep,
Yeah.
getting up, or going to work. That's all routines. But when
Yeah.
ritual adds an element of the sacred, and I think we've lost the sacred in life, especially as
Yeah.
we've become less theistic and less into religion and,
Yeah.
live a more secular life. Sacred elements are left. And sacred, I just think, is some level of devotion, a deep sense of love, some level of gratitude, deep, thankful appreciation, and a level of reverence. So a deeper level of respect. So when we add devotion, gratitude, and reverence to any practice, it could be making the bed and being, I'm really grateful that I have a bed to sleep on, a roof over my head, that
Mm.
that shifts it. You
Yeah.
know, one was just a little routine because I don't want the bed to look shit, and one is imbued with a deeper sense of appreciation and love for your life. So
But
meditation for me is
dedication. What did you say? Dedication, gratitude,
uh,
and
devotion, reverence,
devotion,
gratitude. Yeah.
reverence, gratitude. Yeah.
So meditation for me is a ritual that
Yeah.
helps me step into that. I've been meditating for so over a decade with a technique that I teach. It's called One Giant Mind. It's a derivative of Vedic meditation, which I study. So similar to transcendental meditation, use a mantra, which is a sound that's repeated effortlessly within the mind, which helps the mind transcend, so move from the conscious to the subconscious.
When you say it's a
And
sound, like a bing or a
a
buzz or a
word, a
word.
word, but
Yeah.
I say a sound because it's a Sanskrit word, and in Sanskrit, words are frequency. Every letter has its own frequency. They don't see a dog, a puppy, as puppy. You know, it will be the frequency of puppy.
Right.
Which is really, really interesting. It's an ancient language, and that's how it works. So it affects the body from a frequency level and an energetic level because the body is frequency and energy. I mean, we're all just energy.
Mm.
That's subatomic particles manifested in form, and so I use that, and that sound helps me to enter into the subconscious. So you have an experience that is almost like um, you're in the bridge between dreaming and awake. You're living in that space, which is very restful, very relaxing, um, and, and it tunes down the nervous system a hell of a
Yeah.
lot. So that's my baseline. And then I
Is that
do
something you
all
do every morning, like when you get up or at night or?
every morning, sometimes twice a
Yeah.
day. It's a twice a day, 20-minute practice. And that's
Yeah.
what I did for a number of years, number of years. Now I might do one of them and another type of meditation, more a mindfulness meditation, or what I call a bliss meditation, which is, I talk about the idea of bliss in the book. Once again, from a Sanskrit perspective, the word ananda is bliss. We have ananda mice in the body. There are bliss hormones. And we see bliss as a feeling, but it's actually a state. So a state of groundedness, contentment, equanimity, peace, safety. And so I do a meditation that brings me back into that state.
Mm.
And so I use an image of a space where I've experienced that. And often that space for people is nature, because nature,
Yeah.
in that symbiosis that we feel with nature, we feel grounded and peaceful and contented. And so I've got a place that I talk about in the book, and but anyone can have a tree, that they've experienced this sense of deep groundedness and connection and safety and peace. and joy, happiness. And so I meditate into the visualization of that space. I feel a coherence between my mind and my heart in that space. I feel an opening of my heart. And so we're moving into what's really heart meditation,
Right.
which is what Joe Dispenza's work is all based on.
Yeah.
Um,
How,
yeah,
how have you
because the
studied
heart doesn't
this?
lie. You know what I mean? Heart rate variability doesn't. It doesn't lie.
Yeah.
A blood test can lie or whatever, but a heart rate doesn't lie. And so we see how this affects heart rate. We see how it affects heart rate variability. We see what gratitude and love and appreciation and devotion and all these things can do for the heart rate. And therefore, all I've done is visualize something in my mind, and it's changed the whole way the heart is operating.
Yeah. Yeah, there's proof to it all.
Oh yeah, and you notice when you're anxious, what happens to your heart rate?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you see, I mean, where do you see the world at the moment, and where do you see it heading with this high level of awareness and consciousness that's being talked about more and more nowadays? But I think there's two sides to it, but I'd love your thoughts.
I think there's two sides to it.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And we're seeing with the psychedelic movement and where that's going. And I talk about the use of psychedelics that they've been a part of my spiritual journey, and they've been a part of my transcendence journey, or my journey of flow with the universe, feeling into that sense of oneness. Um, uh, so I've taken mushrooms many times. I've explored ayahuasca, all sort of uh, tryptamines that enable a space for one to move beyond the confines of the thinking and feel into the heart, really feel into the heart, in and really feel into the soul and feel into oneness. And we can conceptualize, I talked about oneness. People go, oh yeah, I know, I get what you're talking about. The ego separates, there's a conscious sort of part of us that can feel that oneness. But in the conceptual mind, we don't embody. We only intellectualize. So having the experience on psilocybin, having experience on whatever, enabled me to really feel what it was like. And then I know what the feeling is, and I can experience that feeling again.
Right.
And I
Okay.
think there's a whole group of people who are meditating, who are doing breath work, who are doing psychedelics, who are doing growth mindset work, who are really wanting to work on this conscious, aware part of their innate being. And there's people who are trying to get more, trying to have more, the bigger house, the better job, the car, the this, the that, the prettier face, the better bum, the whatever it is. And they're trying to get their contentment in the external world.
Yeah.
So people are either going in or they're going out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people go out, 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 out before they go, fuck. Well, I got the 3 bedroom, I got the 6 bedroom house. I got I got the best job in the world. I'm famous. I got 500,000 Instagram followers. Nothing's changed. I got to go in, so.
That's the do have be model, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's how society teaches us to do it. And then we get to an end
Exactly.
point and go, shit,
Yeah, and so I
this
think
isn't
that
feeling good.
that's the difference. Those who are wanting to connect to something deeper, and those who aren't for whatever reason, and power and greed and politics and all of this plays into it,
Hmm.
and so it's a time. It's the hardest time, I think, in society to become discerning and aware and conscious, but also because there's so much coming at us, constantly distracted, and the
I
phones
think
and
there's a fear of like, slowing down and pausing more and not working so hard and not doing all these things that we think we have to do, that if we don't do it, somehow we'll be left behind. I don't
mm,
know, but because you think about, okay, well, half an hour meditating, well, no, I could actually be making some phone calls or doing some work or doing something that's going to get me more of something.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't see the benefit from meditating for half an hour and how much more that could give you.
Yeah. Well, we've been trained into believing that we're human doings,
Yeah.
and we're not human doings, we're human beings.
Hmm.
And meditation is an opportunity for being, just to be in your being a present, conscious, aware human. All right. And when we come from that place, we imbue all our doing with a deeper sense of self, a greater sense of love, a greater sense of respect and reverence and devotion and gratitude and compassion and passion and purpose and bliss and all these wonderful things. The other version, the human doing, is often driven by fear.
Yeah.
So it's beyond my pay grade, but I do think that um, our existence is generally derivative of either love or fear. Love comes from the soul. Love comes from being. Fear generally comes from doing,
Yeah.
needing to do, scarcity, not enoughness, lack.
There's some nice thoughts to leave everyone with.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you, Josh, for coming on today and chatting with me.
No worries at all, mate. We got through so much there. We could
I,
probably talk for hours, mate.
I think we
Yeah.
probably could. We'll have to do round
Yeah.
two. Round two
Yeah, mate.
sometimes. What's your puppy's name?
This is Ziggy. She is divine little angel. She's 8 weeks old. And yeah, I didn't think I could
Ziggy.
like talking about love. Sometimes you didn't think you had a little another inch of love in your heart, but I think I've got an MCG sized amount more
It's
for this one.
funny you say that. I just got a dog. I was snoozing
Really?
before. I don't know where he's gone. But no, little Staffy, rescue dog. Beautiful dog.
Ah, good on you.
So they're a bit of joy to have in life.
Oh, they're just amazing. Yeah, they're just amazing.
Mate, how can people best connect with you?
Um, through my social media, probably
Yeah.
at Josh Piterman, just one T and one N in Piterman. You can follow on with anything related to the book and some of these deeper discussions there or on the podcast channel, which is at Go Behind the Mask, either on YouTube or on Instagram.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and this little one got an Instagram page, so you can follow her at Ziggy Cavoodle 2025. I'm selling you out. You didn't give me permission, but you're
Cavoodle.
getting started. You're gonna be an influencer, babe. You're gonna get everything from the external world.
For those of you listening, check out our YouTube channel. You can see our live chat there as well. So, Josh, thank you so much, brother, for coming on. Good to chat with
Cheers,
you.
mate.
Could do it again, and I hope we do.
Yeah, me too, mate. Me too.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks
Check it
for
out
having
at
me on.
thehiddenwhy.com. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon. Well, there you have it, my interview with Josh Piterman. What an inspiring conversation. Josh and I could have talked for hours longer. We actually did talk for a little bit longer after the show completed there today. But look, I hope you enjoyed it. Very inspiring. As always, the show notes, the links to Josh, the book, will be available at thehiddenwhy.com. And if you want to connect with myself, feel free to reach out on Instagram, Facebook. Would love to connect with you and hear from you, hear about your journey, what's working well for you, what you're struggling with, and see how we can help you live a life with greater freedom, fulfillment, and happiness. That's what it's all about for me. Now, I am about to launch a new podcast called Start Smart. It's particularly for real estate agents, so watch this space for that one. And guys, anything else we can help with, let me know. Have a great week ahead and enjoy life. Thank you.